Hi, my name is Borys, and in this video we're going through 3 minimal techno track ideas in Ableton 12. We're gonna go over the drums, synths and mixing to give you an overview of how to create tracks in this genre. Before we get into the video, if you like what we are doing on this channel, make sure to subscribe. We've got more content about Ableton coming up. If you'd like to learn Live 12 with all the foundations of music production, check out the Beginner to Advanced Live 12 Start to Finish course. And the full project files with today's tracks are part of the brand new minimal techno pack called Voyager, which is linked in the description. Alright, so let's get started. So the first track for today is called Switch, and let's just play it. We're going top to bottom, and I'm just gonna get started with the kick drum. Hear this? It's fairly dry with just doing subtle EQing and saturation. And then we've got a claps/percussions group. So first of all, we've got a clap with reverb on. Nothing crazy over here. It's layered with another clap. A bit weirder sounding, but it's also stereo, so making it a bit more interesting. We've got a snare, so let's play that with the kick. So already adding a bit of groove and another offbeat position here. And then we've also got this clap layered with our first 2 claps. Alright, so that's fairly simple. Now we've got a subgroup with some perk sounds. So we've got this perk sample layered with this one, also playing this one. The programming is very detailed over here, but it's mostly just creating a rhythm from various different perk sounds. And we've also got this snare. There's not that much to explain here. We could take a look at all of these tracks in parallel. This is what it looks like. And as you can see, some of these are not quite on the grid, so make sure to experiment with that on the perks to add a lot of groove to your tracks. And then we've got a cymbals group, so let's listen to that one. We've got this closed hat layered with this one, so let's play that with the kick. Not quite on the grid again. And then we've also got this one, just for a switch up. And then we've got the cymbals group. So mostly just 3 layers, 2 rides and an open hat. And we've got a shaker and a closed hat. So a lot of layers here. All of this just adds a lot of high cymbal frequencies, especially with this dense percussion layer. All of this really fills out the frequency spectrum. On top we've got a snap. And this bounces from left to right with this auto pan. And then we've got a perk loop, which is mostly just acting as a snare with a bit of a snare roll here towards the end. So let's play the entire drums group now. And it's very, very groovy. Okay, so let's take a look at the bass now. And it's the main focus of this track here. First of all, we've got a sub. And it's fairly simple, just a saw wave, just a 24 dB per octave filter and running off the highs. We have quite a simple pattern here as well. Also a bit of groove applied to the MIDI, so it fits with the groovy drums that we have. Just revolves around D sharp. Then on top of this, we've got a mid layer. And this is also a saw wave, but we've got 8 voices of unison in the shimmer mode, so it's just sounding very big. will sound like this, but we're rolling down the filter and also doing a bit of mid-side balancing so that we get just a mid signal, and the sides are quite tricky in the bass frequencies, especially on club systems, so we're just mostly reducing it to the mid signal. On top of this, we've also got this sort of answer. And this one just sounds a bit different, so we've got a longer release and a nice envelope applied to the frequency knob of the filter. Also 8 voices of unison, so sounding huge here. We just have sort of a question and answer, you could say, underneath all of this fat sub. On top we've got ducking and we've also got saturation. Now let's take a look at the instruments. We've got this pluck, which is just a square wave with the pulse width setting at 45%. So just sounding a bit thinner. And just changing up the harmonics on top. And we've got a ping pong delay and some EQing, and it's very subtle, so in these minimal techno tracks, these plucks can be quite in the background. We've got a support pluck going on here. So playing alongside the first pluck, just a triangle wave and a bit of release on top and reverb, so a bit smoother sounding. Then we've got this pluck, which has a long reverb here, and it's also got redux on top. So it's sounding very digital, and then we've also got a growl sound, so just a sample, but also with redux. And then on top we've got some Atmos synths, so these are very in the background. We don't even have sidechaining going on here, just saw wave with unison and reverb. Then we've got another saw wave with unison and reverb, but this one is just very bassy. And we're just removing the sub, of course, from here, not to clash with our sub. Also an Atmo pluck sort of sound here, and also this one. So just a sine wave playing quite high, just for additional harmonics on top of the entire track. Alright, and let's take a look at the second track for today. So this one is called Earth, and let's just play it. Alright, so this one has a lot of drum tracks. We've got the kick drum first, of course. No major processing on it. A clap and then another one towards the end. And then the cymbals group is very elaborate. It's all very minimal, very sharp and snappy. So we've got this one layered with this one. And a subgroup with a shaker, and a lot of groove applied here on it. As you can see, this would be the grid here, and we are just offsetting these two notes for the groove on the shaker. Then another one here. What's cool about the second one is that we are panning it left and right here with this auto pan, and then on top of this we've got a ride, also a clap. So it's very wide actually, just adding this ear candy to this group. And then we've also got a perk here and the cymbal towards the end of this section. So just a ride. So let's play the cymbals group once again. And then we've got a perk, very minimal sounding. So we're just picking the snappiest, lightest perks available, and also a tom. On top, there's just a crash. So let's play the drums from the start. So as you can hear, the bulk of the groove comes from the kick and the tom actually. This tom has a bit of groove applied. As you can see, it's not on the grid, so that's what's creating the groove. If we disable these two tracks, it's mostly the shaker and the additional cymbals on top and perks. All right, so let's take a look at the bass line now. All right, it's fairly basic, very repetitive. We've got this sub, which is between the triangle wave and the saw wave, so not too aggressive sounding. Would sound like this without the major processing here. In the mid-side mode here in the utility, we are just taking out the sides, so just leaving the mid signal. And then I'm just cutting the mids and highs, just leaving the bass frequencies. And then on top of this, we've got this mid bass, which is very sharp, very snappy, just classic unison mode, 3 voices. And this is just on top of the bass, just to add a bit of higher frequencies and a different rhythm as well. Maybe let's play this with the kick. This is also making the track quite groovy. And then as for the other instruments, let's take a look at the square pluck first. So we've got a plate reverb on top of it. We've got the chorus, legacy chorus, delay, EQ, and autopan. So a lot of processing, but the synth itself is quite simple. Just a square wave, an envelope applied to the frequency, and then a little bit of LFO applied to the pitch, so it's a bit more wobbly sounding. And then with the effects, it's very spacious. All right, so we've got a vocal synth line here. Lots of effects stacked, but the essence of this track is just the way the sampler is set up. So we've just picked a very short fragment. We're using the fade in and fade out to just make it very smooth sounding. And we're just playing a single note with also the velocity changes. The effects on top mostly just reduce the frequency spectrum and make it sound quite subtle and put it in the background of the track. All right, so let's take a look at this lead as well. So just playing along the vocal synth, and then the same thing here and here. So we're just playing these 16th notes in all of these tracks. Here we just have a saw wave. 8 voices of unison, shimmer mode, would sound pretty big if we opened up the frequency, but we're just leaving it very minimal. Similar thing going on here. Just less voices and less amount of the unison. Similar thing with no unison, but just playing a few octaves higher. And then we have a pad. Very, very subtle, and in the background, mostly just square wave going through a lot of reverb. So additional effects on top is just a noisy down filter. And one thing that I wanted to mention as well is that we are using automations here, especially on these vocal synth and leads. And we're opening it up towards the end of the first 4 bars and also towards the end of the second 4 bars. So we're just adding a bit of movement to these otherwise quite static 16-note synths. Okay, so here's the third project for today. This one is called Bounce. Alright, so let's get started with the kick drum. This track is a bit simpler than the tracks we've had before. This is the kick drum, and then on top, we're just boosting the frequencies around 600 Hz and doing a bit of saturation. Then with the clap snare, we've got this sound, and we're just cutting the lows and saturating again. Then the magic happens here with the cymbals. So we've got a few tracks here. This really nice offbeat hat, and this one in this position here, making it groove. These two hats already make it sound really nice. And then we've got a ride on top, and then some snap sounds as well, with ping pong delay on top, so making it very wide and interesting in the stereo spectrum. So these three tracks are just layered. We've got two open hats actually, and a cymbal, and just EQing every track individually. And then on top, we've just got a tom as well. So let's play this drums group from the start. Let's solo the bass group. So we've got this bass sub, which is doing a bit of warping on a simple sine wave. We've also got a sine wave which is placed a fifth above, and also a sub. And that's pretty much all that is going on here. No major processing on it, other than sidechain, of course. Then we've got a bass mid layer, which is repeating the same MIDI. And here we've got two wavetables, which are pretty much the same patch. The only difference being, first one has 5 voices of classic unison applied, and the second one doesn't have unison. So the second one is very monofocused, and the first one has more movement and, yeah, basically this huge unison sound. And we are reducing this signal to the mids here in the mid-side mode of utility, accessed right here. So let's take a look at just the first layer. We've got a saw wave, another one placed an octave above, and then also a sub. We're just repeating this and removing the unison, and this is inside an instrument track. So if you'd like to do that, you can always Control or Command and G after selecting the device, and this puts your device in an instrument track. On top of this, we've got drum bus for some saturation, and then EQing and just ducking. And then we've got a sort of answer here with this bass lead. This is just adding a bit more spice here in the bass section, and yeah, we're just removing the very low so that it doesn't crash, mostly using the mid signal, just a simple saw wave with a bit more release here, especially on this envelope applied to the frequency knob. Also there's a bass riser towards the end. Very simple sound. Mostly just the trick is to use the envelope with a long attack and assign it to the pitch. Alright, so let's take a look at the instruments here, and we've got this synth to begin with. It's fairly basic. We have a bit of attack on this envelope applied to the frequency, of course, so that it opens up quite gradually. We've got a few effects here, so chorus, reverb, delay, and EQing. The main sound comes from the glide, which basically sits around 80 milliseconds, and I needed to manually just add these little ghost notes before every glide so that it's actually enabled. And as far as I'm aware, there's no way to just have an always sort of button here so that the glide happens every time. We just need to add these ghost notes, so very short notes, then offset the second note so that the glide is accessed, because it would sound like this without it. And then when we add the ghost notes, it's just adding this movement, and it's really, really nice. And also a bit of drive here on this filter. And we've got this low lead as well, which is very, very bassy. It's adding this really nice main synth line here. So mostly the melodies we have is just this synth playing and then this sort of answer from the low lead. This is also the shimmer mode with 8 voices, so huge sound, a stack of saw waves, 1 detuned 24 semitones, so 2 octaves down, and yeah, also reducing the mid-side balance here. And ducking, of course. And towards the end, we have the string sound, which is really easy to make. All I did here is the saw wave, longer attack, a bit of release, and reverb 100%. And a bit of decay on the reverb as well. And EQing as well, of course. As for the effects, here in this section, we just have this impact. Alright, I hope you will find this video useful. Make sure to check out our Music Production Academy with lots of start to finish courses on making tracks in various genres. And if you'd like to learn Live 12 with all the foundations of music production, check out the Beginner to Advanced Live 12 Start to Finish course. The full project files of today's tracks are part of the brand new minimal techno pack called Voyager, which is linked in the description. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like, write a comment, and I will see you in the next ones.